They underestimated him, dismissed him, and treated him like a fool. From the moment Jared Calloway walked into that courtroom, the air was thick with judgment. He wasn't supposed to belong there, not in his worn-out suit, not with his crooked tie, and certainly not without a lawyer at his side. But Jared wasn't there for appearances. He was there for justice. Every whisper in the gallery was the same. Pity, mockery, disbelief. They looked at him and saw a man grasping at something already lost. His grandmother's home had been foreclosed, the paperwork signed, the property sold. To everyone else, the case was closed. But Jared knew better. He had spent 6 months living in a storm of sleepless nights, buried under stacks of documents, hunting for a truth the system hoped he'd never find. Judge Walter Grayson sat high above the room, glasses low on his nose, his expression somewhere between boredom and mild irritation. Across the aisle sat Bryce Sterling, a man who carried arrogance like a badge of honor. His tailored suit gleamed beneath the courtroom lights, his watch catching the reflection of power. He didn't even glance at Jared when he chuckled and said, "This won't take long." But it would, because for the first time in his career, Bryce Sterling was about to face a man who couldn't be intimidated by wealth or title, a man who had nothing left to lose. When the judge asked if he was representing himself, Jared simply said, "Yes, Your Honor." His voice was steady, even as quiet laughter rippled through the courtroom. Sterling leaned toward his assistant and whispered, "This'll be quick." Jared heard it. He was meant to. But he didn't react. He'd been underestimated all his life. He knew what that felt like, and this time he planned to use it. The judge sighed, flipping through the file. "This is a property dispute, correct? A foreclosure challenge?" Jared nodded. "Yes, sir. My grandmother's home." "And you believe you can argue this case against a seasoned attorney like Mr. Sterling?" "I don't believe, Your Honor. I know." The words hung in the air like the calm before thunder. For a moment, even the snickers stopped. The judge tilted his head. "Very well, let's proceed." Sterling rose first, every motion rehearsed. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is simple. The law is clear. My client followed every regulation in acquiring the property. The defendant," he gestured toward Jared without looking at him, "refuses to accept reality. Contracts, deadlines, obligations, these things matter. Emotion does not." He sat, satisfied. To him, the trial was already over. Jared stood slowly. His hands didn't shake. "Your Honor," he began, "Mr. Sterling is right about one thing. The law is clear. But the question isn't whether the law was followed, it's whether his client actually followed it." A flicker crossed Sterling's face, something between annoyance and curiosity. "I spent the last 6 months studying every case, every loophole, every way banks twist the rules to take homes that don't belong to them, and I found something." The judge leaned forward slightly. "Something?" Jared nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, fraud." The word dropped like a stone in water. The murmurs in the gallery turned into a low wave of surprise. Sterling's smirk faltered. The judge's pen stopped moving. "You're accusing the plaintiff of fraud?" Grayson asked. "Yes, Your Honor, and I can prove it." Sterling laughed once, sharp, dismissive. "Your Honor, this is absurd." Jared ignored him. "Before I continue, I'd like to submit a request for discovery. I believe the plaintiff is hiding documents, specifically forged mortgage signatures." Grayson's brow furrowed. "Forged signatures?" Jared stepped forward, holding 2 copies of the same mortgage agreement. "The signatures don't match. One of them isn't my grandmother's." The judge examined the pages, his expression shifting from detached to alert. Sterling tried to recover. "Signatures can change over time, Your Honor." "Maybe," Jared said, "but the second signature is dated 3 months after the first, and the day after my grandmother was hospitalized for a stroke." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Even the jury leaned forward. Grayson looked up, voice colder now. "Mr. Sterling, does your client have the original signed documents on file?" He hesitated, just long enough to answer the question himself. "We would need time to retrieve them." Jared's lips curved. "That's fine. I'll wait." The silence that followed wasn't mocking anymore. It was tense, charged. The man they'd written off as a fool had just drawn blood. But Jared wasn't finished. He turned to the judge again. "Your Honor, the mortgage was sold 3 times before it reached the current lender. Each transfer should include an endorsement, a legal handoff. But the last transfer," he handed another document up to the bailiff, "has no signature at all." The judge flipped through the papers, frowning. "No signature?" "None," Jared said, "which means the last company never had legal ownership of the loan. They had no right to foreclose in the first place." Gasps filled the room. Sterling's confident mask began to crack. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant." "No," Grayson interrupted, "this is a problem." Jared's heart pounded, but his voice stayed calm. "They call this a standard procedure, but there's nothing standard about stealing someone's home with fake paperwork." The judge turned sharply towards Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, does your client have an explanation?" He stammered, "Your Honor, I'd need to confer with my client." Jared didn't let him finish. "The same client who's been caught doing this in other foreclosure cases? Because I looked. My grandmother's case isn't the only one." He handed another set of papers to the bailiff. The judge read them slowly, his jaw tightening. "This isn't looking as simple as you claimed," Grayson said. For the first time, Sterling had no answer. Jared turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I'd like to call a witness, the notary who stamped the second mortgage." Sterling shot up. "Objection! This witness wasn't disclosed. I just found her yesterday, and what she told me changes everything." The judge studied him, then nodded. "I'll allow it." The door opened, and a woman stepped nervously into the courtroom. Linda Myers, licensed notary public. She looked small under the weight of so many eyes. "Miss Myers," the judge said, "state your name and occupation for the record." She did, her voice trembling. Jared asked gently, "Do you recall notarizing a mortgage modification for my grandmother, Alma Calloway?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I do." "Were you present when she signed it?" Her eyes darted toward Sterling, then back to Jared. "No, I wasn't." "Then how did you notarize it?" Her shoulders sagged. "I was told just to stamp it." Sterling jumped up. "Your Honor, this is hearsay." "Overruled," Grayson snapped. His patience was gone. "Miss Myers, are you saying you notarized a document without witnessing the signature?" "Yes, sir. I didn't realize what it meant at the time." The courtroom fell silent, except for the rapid scribble of the stenographer's pen. Jared spoke clearly, every syllable measured. "Your Honor, given this testimony, the forged signature, and the missing endorsements, I move to have the foreclosure declared null and void. My grandmother's home was taken through fraud, and now you have the proof." The judge didn't speak right away. He sat back, reading the papers again, his face unreadable. Finally, he set them down and looked directly at Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, your client submitted false documents to this court. I don't take that lightly." He lifted the gavel. "The court rules in favor of the defendant. The foreclosure is void. The property is to be returned immediately." The sound of the gavel echoed like thunder. For a moment, Jared just stood there. The months of frustration, the nights spent alone with his grandmother's boxes of papers, the fear of losing everything she had worked for, it all rushed back. His shoulders relaxed, as if the weight of an entire world had finally lifted. Across the room, Bryce Sterling sat frozen, the smirk gone, replaced by a stunned vacancy. The man who'd laughed at Jared, who'd seen him as nothing but a formality, had just been exposed for the fraud he represented. But Jared didn't smile. His victory wasn't about humiliation. It was about restoration. His grandmother's home was safe. Her name was cleared. When he stepped out into the sunlight, the air felt heavier, fuller. A few people from the gallery followed him out, whispering in awe. One said, "Never saw it coming." Another murmured, "That man should have been a lawyer." Jared didn't turn around. He didn't need their praise. He'd learned something stronger than pride. He'd learned that justice belongs to those who refuse to surrender. Behind him, the courthouse doors creaked open. Judge Grayson's voice called out, "Calloway." Jared stopped and turned. The judge descended the steps, hands in his pockets, the sharpness gone from his eyes. "You surprised me in there," he said. "Most men who come in alone